What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut with another trade breakdown video. And this one is, of course, of the aforementioned Matt Latos trade, which occurred on July 30th, 2015. Now, if you saw the Mark Burrell trade breakdown, you know that that video was already, basically filling up the whole screen. And this one, as you can see, also all but fills up the whole screen. It has three separate three-team trades involved, so it really took a lot of effort to get this whole thing on my whiteboard. But without further ado, we shall jump into the video, and as always, we have the three-team trades are color-coded, so the team, as you can see, for example, LA is in blue, so any players in blue were acquired from the Dodgers. So, like I said, without further ado, let's jump right in. So, first off, the LA Dodgers, LANL if you prefer, would acquire starting pitcher Matt Latos and utility man, mostly a first baseman, but he played all around, utility man Michael Morse from the Miami Marlins. And they would also acquire 5 players from the Braves, and those players would be Branson Arroyo, starting pitcher Alex Wood, who has been both a starter and a reliever, mostly because the Dodgers have such a good starting rotation. Relief pitchers Jim Johnson and Luis Alivan, and infielder Jose Pereza. The Marlins would acquire a trio of prospect pitchers, all from the Dodgers. All of those 3 names are Victor Arujo, Jeff Brigham, and Kevin Guzman. And the Braves would acquire 3 players directly, and those players would be outfielder Hector Olivera, relief pitcher Paco Rodriguez, and pitcher Zachary Bird. Now, usually this doesn't happen all that much in baseball, but they did acquire a 2016 compensatory first-round pick from the Miami Marlins, and that pick would become the 40th overall pick, and they would use it to select starting pitcher Joey Wentz. So how did all of these players stack up? Well, so first things first, start with the man in the title, Matt Latos. So Latos himself, he struggled, and he gets DFA'd by the Dodgers a month and a half after this trade happens. Now, interestingly enough, he actually ends up signing for like 2 weeks with the Angels, and he's not even allowed to play in the playoffs, so they just kind of signed him, had him pitch out of the bullpen. But he didn't do that hot in LA, as evidenced by his WAR there of a negative .6. Now, Michael Morse, he actually ends up getting shipped immediately, right after this trade, to the Pittsburgh Pirates. So the Pirates would acquire Michael Morse, while the Dodgers would acquire outfielder Jose Tabata. And Tabata, he appeared in just about 50, 60 minor league baseball games before getting released. So he was not really much of anything. The Dodgers just didn't need the contract of Michael Morse, but it was the only way to make this trade work. Now, on Pittsburgh's side, Michael Morse, he struggled in 1 month with the team before getting designated for the assignment himself. So, kind of a wash. How did the Atlanta guys do for the Dodgers? Well, Bronson Arroyo actually gets released after the 2015 season. He never played for the Dodgers. They just didn't start him or use him in the bullpen even. So, unfortunately for him. Jim Johnson, he would struggle mightily and gets designated for the assignment. He just kept getting lit up out of the bullpen, unfortunately for him. Whereas Luis Avilan, he spends 2.5 years bouncing between the minors and the majors for the Dodgers, and he plays well in 2017, but him playing well eventually leads to his trade. And he gets traded in a 3-team trade. We will get to that one. It's the top one of the 2 momentarily. I just don't want to jump into a second 3-team trade right now. Speaking of trades, we have Jose Pereza, who himself is also included in a 3-team trade. It's going to be the bottom one here, which we will get to shortly. But for the Dodgers, he just makes his debut for the Dodgers, and he only appears in 7 games. This is due to injuries and just the fact that the Dodgers are the Dodgers, so they're a good team. And he ends up, getting traded, obviously, like I said, and we will get to that shortly. But he just didn't play enough to get a WAR that counted. And then I missed Alex Wood. So Alex Wood, he was a solid pitcher, both as a starting pitcher and a bullpen pitcher, a reliever, for 3.5 seasons before being traded to Cincinnati. Now that trade occurred, and that trade is discussed in the Yasiel Puig video. That video has not been released yet, and it will probably be one of the next ones. It's a new recent trade, but because it is mentioned here, I did kind of have to make a separate video for it, which I'm fine with. Other than that, though, that's going to be the Dodgers haul. So let's quickly just jump into the... let's jump into this trade here, the top of the 3-team trades. So that's the Luis Avilan trade, and he ends up getting traded, obviously, like I said. So the Dodgers would acquire relief pitcher Scott Alexander from the Kansas City Royals and infielder Jake Peter from the Chicago White Sox. The White Sox would acquire Luis Avilan, obviously from the Dodgers, and relief pitcher Joakim Soria from the Royals, while the Royals would acquire starting pitcher Trevor Oakes and utility man Eric Mejia, both of whom came from the Dodgers organization. So how did this work out? Well, as you can tell by the WARs, nobody really stood out on their new teams. So Scott Alexander, he's been a good relief pitcher for the Dodgers, but nothing spectacular. Well, Jake Peter is still a minor league baseball player in the organization, so the jury is still out on that one. Don't expect him to really make a big name for himself, though. On the White Sox side, Avilan, he spent a good half season there, but nothing spectacular. Soria was the better pickup for Chicago. He was a good bullpen arm for the half season before he himself got traded. And of course, I didn't jump into that trade. They're not one of our top 2 teams. I didn't have the room on the whiteboard to do that, even if I wanted to. Whereas for Kansas City, Trevor Oakes, he struggled mightily in his couple of appearances before getting designated for the assignment. While Mejia, he debuted in September of 2019, and he didn't get a lot of playing time in 2019. And we don't look at the 2020 stats yet, but, he seems like a fringe roster player for a couple seasons before getting cut himself. But, of course, that's an outsider looking in. So this trade was really just kind of a wash. And then we'll discuss the other 3-team trade here. So this leads to a 2-team trade, but we will do that. We will discuss that one after. So, obviously, again, the color-coded, and again, it involves the Dodgers and the White Sox. This time they have a different third team, and that's going to be the Cincinnati Reds. So the LA Dodgers would acquire starting pitcher Frankie Montas, second baseman Michael Johnson, and outfielder Trace Thompson, all of whom came from the Chicago White Sox organization. The White Sox would acquire third baseman Todd Frazier from the Cincinnati Reds organization, while the Reds would acquire infielder Jose Pereza, outfielder Scott Schebler, and utility man Brandon Dixon. Now, this trade has more definitive results, fortunately. And for the record, I do think Todd Frazier is one of the more underrated players in this past decade. So I like Todd Frazier. When this trade happened, I was happy for the White Sox because, they're the little brothers of the Chicago. Nobody really cares about them. So on the Dodgers side of this trade, I will mention the Montes trade. He doesn't play for the Dodgers. He gets traded to Oakland. I'll mention that once I get through this 3-team trade. Michael Johnson himself, he only takes 7 at-bats for the Dodgers before he himself is designated for the assignment. He didn't do all that much. Trace Thompson. So Thompson, he bounces between the minors and the majors for 2 seasons before he himself is cut. Nothing great. Nothing spectacular. On the White Sox side, so Todd Frazier, he has a solid 1.5-year career with the White Sox before he himself gets traded. Again, I couldn't mention this trade. I didn't have the room to. And the Reds, The Reds are kind of the winners of this trade, kind of, because they got a couple decent role players for him. So Pereza had a streaky 3.5 years. They kept trying to get him to be a starter. He'd be good as a bench bat, and then they'd get him in the starting rotation. He'd start to struggle, and then they'd bench him, and then he'd heat up again. It was just a mess. Streaky's the best word to put it. Schebler, he spent 4 years as a solid fourth outfielder for the Reds, so he's a good guy. Again, another good bench bat who wasn't good enough to start, and they had to get rid of him because of the outfield conundrum they have right now with all of these good outfielders. And then Dixon, he actually was a really solid utility man. He played all of these positions. I think he even pitched in a game for the Reds. I could be wrong on that one. I think he appeared in 7 different positions. I know catcher wasn't one. I think it was catcher and center field were the 2 he didn't play in. And he did that over 74 games before getting released because his offense just wasn't there. Now, back to the Dodgers and, of course, Frankie Montes. So, the Dodgers would trade Montes along with pitchers Jarrell Cotton and Grant Holm to the Oakland Athletics in exchange for outfielder Josh Reddick and pitcher Rich Hill. So, Rich Hill, he has 3.5 solid seasons in LA, but he's been dealing with injuries lately. He dealt with a lot of injuries, and they really slowed him down. He left in free agency prior to the 2020 season. Josh Reddick, he only played a half season in the Dodgers organization. Now, he actually started off really bad for the Dodgers, and he just caught fire later in the season. So he's very fortunate to a WAR of 0.0 is what I'm trying to get at. He was just ice cold when they acquired him originally. Now, on the Oakland side of things, we all know Frankie Montes. He's their ace right now. He's really good. He had a drug suspension a couple years ago. It might have been last year, if not the year before. And that kind of scared a lot of people, but he's a pretty good starter right now. So that alone made this trade worth it for the Athletics. Jarrell Cotton, he was decent, but injuries really limited him. And he gets traded to the Cubs after the 2019 season. That trade isn't worth discussing. Way too early. And Grant Holmes, he's currently in the minor league system for Oakland, so jury is still out on that one too. And now let's jump back up to the other 2 teams in the original 3-team trade. And I'll tell you this, Miami did not get lucky. Miami struck out, for lack of a better word, since this is a baseball video. So Miami's pitchers that they acquired all just flamed out. So Kevin Guzman in particular, he never made it past single A. Victor Arujo never made it past double A. And then Jeff Brigham, it's really hard to find information on him because there was another pitcher named Jake Brigham who was in majors around the same time. He was also in the Braves organization. So every time you type in Jeff, it tries to give you his information. And I couldn't find a lot of information on this guy. All I know is he didn't make the majors, so he didn't make the majors. Now we get to the Braves. And I'm going to discuss the compensatory pick first. So like I said, they used that on starting pitcher Joey Wentz. He was actually, a respected pick at that point. I'm pretty sure he was a local kid, so everybody kind of liked that. Now, they would actually end up trading Joey Wentz along with second baseman Travis Demeritte to the Detroit Tigers in exchange for relief pitcher Shane Green. So Shane Green, he hasn't really lived up to the closer role that they wanted him to, but he's been solid. I mean, nothing great, but he's been good, for lack of a better word, just decent. Now, on the Tigers side of things, Joey Wentz is still in the minor leagues, and Travis Demeritte, he's played okay, but he hasn't played a lot. So a lot of prospects, you'll notice they have negative WARs. You'll see the Tigers always have a lot of guys with negative WARs that they get in these trades. It's nothing to worry about if you're a Detroit fan. Give it a couple years. If they're still in the negatives, then there's concern. Other than that, the Braves also acquired, as we know, outfielder Hector Olivera, relief pitcher Paco Rodriguez, and pitcher Zachary Bird. Now, the easiest one to say is Zachary Bird. He never made it past Double A. Paco Rodriguez, he would never appear playing for the Braves because he dealt with various injuries. And Hector Olivera, he just, basically what happens is he's an interesting name, which is kind of why I saved him for last. So when the Dodgers signed him, he was one of those Cuban defectors, and this was in the early 2010s. I think it might have been 2012, 2013. And this is when a lot of Cuban defectors were starting to come over. And it looked like it was going to be a heck of a move, It looked like it was going to be a great signing for the Dodgers. And then they kind of gave up on him because he wasn't achieving what they wanted him to. And he ends up having an off-the-field incident that sees him get suspended for 82 games. I'm pretty sure it was a domestic violence. I don't remember for a fact. And the Braves were just like, okay, this is ridiculous. We don't need him. So they end up trading him. And they trade him to the San Diego Padres in exchange for outfielder Matt Kemp. So Matt Kemp, he gets discussed in the Adrian Gonzalez video. That trade, again, is another one that there was no way, shape, or form it was going to fit on this whiteboard. Trust me, because that one leads to a massive trade. And then, as for the Padres, so Olivera, he literally didn't play for the Padres. They literally just made the trade to cut Kemp's salary. So they end up cutting Olivera once his suspension's up. But that was a longer trade breakdown video. As you can tell, a lot of moves were made. And we'll quickly discuss the wars for the teams involved. So if you go by war, the Dodgers win this trade. And it's not like it's a dominant win. It's mostly because of Rich Hill and Alex Wood. So they get a 10.9 war out of their guys. The Marlins would come in second in the original trade here, getting a 0.0, which tells you the Braves, they get third place with a negative 1.2 after all their acquisitions are done. Of course, that can still go up because Shane Green's still on that team. Same thing can be said with some of the Dodgers, Actually, no, all those players are gone now because, yes, Alex Wood is still there, but he left and then he came back, so I don't count that. As for Pittsburgh, they had a negative 0.2. Chicago, they had a positive reaction as well. They kind of got good value of all their players with a 6.7 war. Kansas City had a negative 0.2. The Tigers have a negative 1.2. San Diego got a 0.0. They just got salary cap relief, which is, well, there's no salary cap in baseball, but salary relief, I should say. The Reds had a solid 3.2, while Oakland has a solid 2.5. And again, that is subject to change as two of those players are still in the organization. But that was the Matt Latos trade. Again, a longer video. I apologize for that. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. We'll be doing a lot of trade breakdowns. I know right now it might seem like I'm only doing baseball, but when there was nothing going on for a couple weeks, I was kind of stuck and I'm watching baseball at home, and I'm just like, you know what? It'd be cool to do baseball, and I can write them down. I can get everything written down and ready to go without recording because I can write down the wars for everybody. But I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good one.